I want my baby back, 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 baby back.
You do it. Stop it. You go. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, back. I want my baby. You have to say back to I want my.
All right.
I'll tap you when you say
it. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. Come on, dude. You
do you know the top part? Do you know the top part?
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back.
Just do it, man, please.
I can't fucking finish it. I'm just keep picturing there's hundreds of people listening to this.
They're not listening. There's nobody listening.
I feel like this would be like a good sleep podcast. We could just do an hour of
I just want to do the part. Just please.
All right. Last time. This is the last time. This is the last time I'm going to try. Okay.
No.
I'm going to get it. I don't think I can do the top part. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, 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 baby back.
Barbecue sauce. It's not yet.
That was good. That was good enough. That was the best we're getting. We're done.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. I'm Dave. Before we start, I made a point of trying to explain everything that happens on the show for anyone who might be new listening to the show. So, before we start the show, I just want to explain the opening. That opening was from Dopey episode 39. And if you're unaware, the other person's voice on the show, who was terribly trying to sing the I Want My Baby Back, was Chris, who was the guy who I started the show with. It was my good friend, and he died over the summer of overdose, and he relapsed after 4 years clean. And when we recorded that one, we had just gone to the supermarket on the Lower East Side to buy chocolate bars. And Chris, because he's an idiot, God bless him, bought a chili-infused chocolate bar, which made me desperate to do the Chili's commercial. So that's what that was. And here and there, I'm going to sprinkle in little bits of old episodes in the new ones because it means so much to me. And I remember how funny me and Chris thought that was, and like it really was. And forever, I will miss him. And but the show can't just be missing Chris. I mean, a lot of the show is missing Chris, but it seems like that's the deal with addiction, is that your friends die and you have to miss them. So bear with me, folks. Now we're going to call our guest. We have a guest, and I haven't told you the bad news, which is I'm fucking sick. But here we go. Our guest is a guy named Chuk Davis from Bob Forrest Don't Die podcast. Let's see if he answers the phone. Chuck's like the level-headed guy on Don't Die.
Hey.
Yo, Chuk. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I was just saying that you're the level-headed guy on Don't Die.
Yeah, in that group I am.
Well, what?
It's kind of scary because I'm not in most other groups I hang out in.
So in other groups, you're not the level-headed guy?
Well, no, it's just, it's one of those, it's a comparison thing. It's compared to Bob, compared to Mike. I hate to say I'm the same one, but that's what people tell me.
Well, you're very reasonable. You're reasonable. You're an easy person to listen to, and you have a certain like je ne sais quoi for getting the conversation to flow a little bit, which is something I always like. You like that, huh?
Right.
Now, my favorite thing about Chuk is like when the don't. And I have a lot of questions, Chuk, but I'm just going to set this up in the first place. When the Don't Die podcast came out, crazily enough, as it opened, Bob said that he stole the entire Don't Die format from our stupid little show, Dopey. And Chris was just shocked. He was like, oh my God, we were so excited. But then as it turns out, Chuk hated Dopey, correct?
Yeah, hate is a rough word, but that's, this is why if I died before Bob, I want him to tell my stories because he makes them better.
Okay.
I'm not saying that he lies, but, the stories get better when Bob tells them. So I just, I was not a fan. Absolutely. My wife would try to play me, Amy would try to play me these things, and I was like, not interested. I don't want to hear about that. I didn't understand it, really. And yeah, I guess you could say strongly disliked.
Wow, I didn't realize you disliked it that much. I thought I was just talking shit. So that's the other most important thing, though, is that Chuk's wife, independently of Bob, Don't Die, Dr. Drew, and all this stuff, was a fan of Dopey, correct?
That's absolutely true.
That's insane. I find it hard to believe that anybody's a fan of Dopey. Even though we have a bunch of fans, it's fucking weird to me. And so your wife is like, there's this amazing podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. It's called Dopey. And she tried to play you bits of our stupid show.
And I've been hearing, since I told her I was going to be doing this, I've been hearing facts about you, everything from like praying mantises in your attic to, he probably needs to go upstairs. That's where he records. So all these sort of intimate details about you that just kind of freaks me out. She knows that much about you.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that anybody does. But I love that you're, Amy. I'm so happy that Amy's such a fan. That definitely touches my heart. And what the Dopey Nation should know is that Chuk is a hardcore drug addict in recovery. Correct?
This is true. I mean, it used to be something you wouldn't say out loud, or especially when someone was recording. And that the whole thing kind of freaks me out because, it used to be something you just kept on the very down low. But I'm so glad that people are talking about it and that they're not ashamed of it. I don't brag about it, but it was just like, I like the fact that it's turning because it's taking too many of our young folks. I mean, much less the lives that are lived in misery, that all the dope that I've ever done, all the different kinds of dope that I've done, they're all that great big lie where it starts off so great and it was an answer for me. And then it ended up being such a fucked up existence that the idea of having to stop or die was a very hard choice to make.
Right. I was what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Just right now, sitting here, I know I believed that, and I know I thought that, and it was just like, fuck, I'm not ready to quit this. Even though I was throwing up blood, and I couldn't hold down food, and I was miserable and broken, and the police were tired of me. And you know what's really weird is I know we talked a few days ago, and I didn't even think what the date was for today. Thursday, today, January 10th, is 20 years since my brother died.
Oh, my God.
And he died as a result of this. It's a weird, in a nutshell, do you mind if I tell you?
No, please.
He was sober for a week. I was working with him. I was fairly new in sobriety at that time, and I was working with him for a week. Well, we worked together for 9 months before he died, but for that week before he was sober, and on that Friday he said, I did so good this week that my girlfriend's going to buy me a six-pack or whatever I want. And because, alcohol isn't a drug, to some folks. And I go, all right, just don't get in any trouble, and, because I'm not going to tell somebody what to do. And that Sunday was my middle kid's birthday, and he was supposed to be at the birthday party on Sunday on the 10th, because it's also my just turned 23 today. My middle kid Sasha's his birthday, and it's like he got drunk. They ended up going to Mexico because it's not that far from here, and they picked up a bunch of pills and drank a bunch of tequila and smoked a bunch of weed, and he got in an argument with his girlfriend on the way home. And the guy that was driving the car pulled over to the center divider and let him out on the freeway. And when he was crossing the freeway to try and get off the freeway, he got hit by a car and killed.
Oh, my God.
So it's one of those things where I was like, when I got the fatality report, I wanted to. It's sick, but I felt better because he was hit on the right side, that he hadn't turned and like faced traffic like a suicide thing.
Right. You were happy that he wasn't actually trying to die.
Right, that it wasn't an on-purpose death, because we've both been around there, and then the fatality report said that the cause of death wasn't struck by a car, but was lack of sober judgment.
Wow.
And I was just like, fuck, it was harsh, and it's still harsh, but it's just like one of those things where it's weird, because one of his guitars, we used to play guitar all the time, and his acoustic guitar that I had at that time that was his, I have at the center, and there's a bunch of newly clean junkies that play it every day to help stay clean through music. It's part of what we do therapeutically over there. So it's kind of cool, and it's kind of like this big circular thing where Jeff's guitar is bringing people joy every day now. I miss the fact he's not here, and it sucks, and it was hard on the family, but I was so glad that I had a 12-step family around me that was able to walk me through it. And I know a lot of people don't dig 12-step, and I know it's not for everybody, and there's a lot of other things out there. There's the Refuge Recovery, there's Celebrate Recovery, there's Smart Recovery, and there's all sorts of different programs in different churches and synagogues and mosques and all that. So, find your own way. But for me, 12-step was the answer. When I got that call that Jeff was gone, I didn't believe it, and then I wanted to go kill the guy that was driving the car.
Right. Was Jeff older brother or younger brother?
Jeff is 3 years younger than me.
And how old were you? How old was he when he died?
He was just turned 28.
And you were 31. And how long had you been clean?
A little over a year.
Wow. So it was very, very, very early recovery.
Yeah, it was early recovery, and that's why, had it happened at another time where I wasn't so plugged in, because I'd been clean several times before that. I'd been on a heroin run that ended pretty quickly, ended in a rehab. Then I went on an LSD and a whole lot of weed run because I knew where the heroin would go. And then I went on an alcohol-only run, and then I knew I couldn't drink, and then there was another sobriety, and then there was a methamphetamine run that cost me about 4 of my teeth, and I found that speed, I was able to do the most damage on speed, and especially speed with vodka. But so I went in and I did what they always say you do, get in the middle of the group, get a sponsor, work steps. I got hooked up with a home group, and we did a lot of shit together, and it was one of those things that I was living in not a sober living, but I lived with like 4 or 5 guys from my home group. And this guy goes, listen, man, your family's going to need you. We're going to drive you over to your mom and dad's house because it's not natural for a parent to bury a child. Your mom and dad are going to be despondent. And I said, no, man, you don't know my dad. He's a hard man, and he'll breeze through this. And, we get there, and we picked up cold cuts, and they said, you need to make sure they're eating. You need to answer the phone when the phone rings, when the neighbors come over. I want you to be there between. So it's like I had people walk me through something that if I'd have been sitting by myself, because like the third thing my head told me was, you could go and pick up right now, and no one could say you didn't have good reason. Right.
You had the ultimate excuse.
Oh, and my head told me that. My addict thinking was instead of I need to be there for my parents and my sister and the other people that are grieving, my thoughts were about I could get loaded right now and they couldn't say shit. No one could say anything. And and the real sick part of it is the second part of what my head told me is you just pick up a little bit and just use for a little while and then just come back to meetings. But I know that's never worked.
Well, what do you think? What do you think kept you from? Because you said you had a bunch of relapse before this thing happened. You had relapsed time and time again. You had gotten a little bit of time. You had been to a bunch of different programs. What do you think it was? You had a year clean, and your little brother, tragically dies, and you don't relapse. What do you think the difference was?
I wish I knew. Other than, it was a really weird thing. I mean, because he was probably the person I was closest to on the planet. We had our own language, and we did music together. We hung out together. We both knew where the bodies were buried for the other guy.
Did you get high with him?
Oh yeah, I got him high for the first time. So there was guilt with that. I mean, it was weed. I never did heroin with him. I did a lot of speed with him. We did a lot of cocaine. We drank a lot. I never introduced him to a needle because there was something inherently, being as old as I am. I'm born in 1967, so. When I was 10, 11 years old, I was seeing my heroes die from that.
Right.
Excuse me. So it's one of those things where I said, I'm never going to do that. As long as I was smoking heroin or smoking speed or smoking cocaine, it wasn't,
right.
It wasn't as bad. But there came a time where that line came up, and I crossed it without any hesitation, just because, how it starts out, it's like people go, marijuana's not a gateway drug, but, when I'm smoking pot, there's someone that had some pills. And then when I started hanging out with them, and that person that had the pills also knew somebody that could get some LSD, or someone that could get some cocaine, or someone that could get some of this. So it put me in a group of people where, it was okay to do. I wasn't the odd man out. As a matter of fact, the more I did, the more I was like one of them, and lower companions. The 12-step books talk about that, and I did. Water speaks its own level, and I ended up, going everywhere I said I'd never go.
Right. And what was the first time you used a needle?
I was probably 18 or 19 years old. It was after being clean again for about a year. I picked up a DUI with a hit and run, and I got out of jail. I only did 10 days in jail, and I practically run a school bus. I drank a fifth of vodka. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving around, and I tried to run a school bus off the road is what they told me that I tried to. I don't really remember.
Right.
But I totaled the car, and the judge said, "You know what? I'm gonna send you to treatment, even though I've been to multiple treatments already." And
well, nobody got hurt. Nobody on the bus didn't crash. Nobody died, right?
No, nobody got hurt. I went across a few front yards, and that's how I totaled the car.
Right.
I broke the axles, both front and back. I mean, my dad was just like, "How the hell did you do that? How did the car keep going?" It was a station wagon at that. But I went into treatment. When I went into treatment that time, it was a place called ASAP in Buena Park, and I met some people that were telling me, "Hey, man, you're fucking smoking this? You're just stupid. You never really got high." So it was like after I was clean a year that time, I actually worked in recovery for a year at that point in 1986. I worked in that hospital for a year. I went 90 days there and then worked there for a year. And then when I got out, it was like, when I was done, because I slowly backed away from 12-step and those people and started hanging out with people that were more on the periphery. And then it was like, I had to try it. I had to get what they said I was missing. I mean, because I always felt like I was missing something.
What was the first thing you shot?
First thing I shot was heroin.
Right.
It was black tar.
Yeah.
It wasn't. We didn't have white heroin here.
No, I know. I lived in California forever. Were they always in those little balloons?
Always in, or sometimes you get it'd come in foil. But yeah, I mean, and it was a total drag because it wasn't like now where you can go and buy needles, it was $10 is what I needed to be able to get high on the heroin. And then it was, for $20 I could get enough to get high now and have some later or tomorrow. But it was $6 for a rig.
Right.
And it was just like, so it quickly went from, because when I do opiates in particular, I'm good doing a whole lot of nothing other than burning my fingers with cigarettes.
Right.
I mean, it's not a whole lot of. I don't understand the guys that like have a fully active life when they're using that, because for me it was about getting loaded and then just finding a place to nod, And so I found myself in a lot of like weird people's houses, people I didn't know, and being like third or fourth on the needle as it's going around.
Wow.
And zero fear of HIV or hepatitis or anything like that. That wasn't even in my mind. It didn't take me more than a couple weeks to be just eyes on the prize, and it was all about, and it's like, I ended up, it's like I was telling, because Amy was like, Dave doesn't drink. It's too bad you never shot heroin. I said, no, I absolutely did. It was a problem. And she goes, how come you didn't tell me? And I said, you never asked.
So your wife discovered that you shot heroin while preparing for Dopey.
Absolutely. And we've been married for 17 years. We've talked about all sorts of things, and she's always been interested in like the drug culture and the prison culture and the darker side of life, but she's never ventured into it.
Right. So she has that voyeuristic intensity. Absolutely. Or whatever.
And I think a lot of the world does right now. I mean, it's all over TV.
Well, it always was. I remember when I was a kid and I would watch TV, and I remember this really well because I would reflect on it after I was a drug addict, that when I would watch a show that had heroin addicts on them, I would get this crazy reaction. Like I would feel something in my arms. Like I would freak out I would feel something. I would like freak out. I would be watching and I would see a junkie shoot up, and I wasn't like, oh my God, that looks amazing. I would get so freaked out, and I'd get this crazy feeling in my arms, like that. It was like too intense to even see it. And I wasn't like the kind of person that was fascinated with it. It seems like totally random that I was ever to become an IV heroin addict, but I did have this crazy effect when I was a kid from watching it. And I was very straight until I was, in my late teens. I didn't smoke weed until I was like 17 or 18, and I certainly barely drank. It's just so weird, the reaction I had to it. But I think it's interesting that Amy is such she's so into the drug culture, and she knows that you're in treatment, and she didn't know that you had shot heroin or probably meth and coke too.
Well, methamphetamine and cocaine were good. I didn't like shooting the cocaine as much because you had to do it so often. The needles aren't good for very long.
Right. When I lived in Los Angeles, and I lived in Los Angeles in 2001. I think I lived in Los Angeles from maybe 2002 to 2008. And still, I had to buy rigs on the street unless I found a needle exchange thing. Like, they weren't selling them when I lived there, and and it was so gross. Like, I don't even know why it didn't cross my mind that this could be a problem. You know what I mean? Like, but I was always buying rigs, and I used the rigs until like they were just so painful and dull. And like, what a crazy phenomenon in California. Do they sell them in the pharmacies now?
Yeah, they do, but like some of like the Walgreens, I think it is the Walgreens, like stopped selling the packages because they got tired of cleaning up their bathrooms.
Right.
People buying them and going and using their facilities. They didn't like what the clientele was bringing in. So I think they stopped just as a store rule, but not as anything else. You say it's dull and the painful, people don't. There's not even matchbooks around like there used to be. It used to be you could go in anywhere and get a matchbook. And I remember getting a rig from a guy and him going, "Man, just go get some matches."
Yeah.
You know, sharpen it on the back, and I was like, "Okay, that was a good idea." I mean, the fact that was a good idea tells me
that you didn't have any good ideas.
You know, that fits with the whole biochemistry of when you flood the limbic system with that much dopamine, it cuts out the natural thought, and you're working with your lizard brain.
But that's old school junkie shit to sharpen the needle on the back of the matchbook. That's old school junkie shit. It really is. You know, I never even thought that I could sharpen a needle, but I love that the idea. You know?
No, I don't know that it worked, but it was something that I went through the straightening them out and being gentle and thinking I'm putting in the work because I'm a craftsman, and that's half the fun that came with that was having a cigar box full of the shit. You know, I've got my spoon, I've got my little thing of water, I've got this, I've got that, I've got my little cooker, I've got my, and I'm going to sharpen my thing, and it's crazy because one of the girls I work with showed me how Walgreens, or not Walgreens, it's like CVS or somebody now actually has like a diabetic kit that looks like a little road case.
Right.
And it places for several of the syringes, and it's like, why didn't they have that when I was growing up?
I remember when I lived out there, I had like gotten some kind of like, it was like almost like a little lunchbox. And I remember like, I was probably, I think I was 28 or something like that at the time, or maybe I was older. Let's do the math. It was 2001. I was like, I don't know.
That was like 17, 18 years ago. How old a man are you?
I'm 44. So I was 17. I don't know. What was I, 31? 30, 29? I think I was 29 when I moved to California because I remember turning 30.
Math is hard.
Yeah, especially, I'm very sick, Chuck. I hadn't tell the Dopey Nation, but I had 102 fever today, and they extracted my tooth last week, Chuck. They fucking fucked me up, man. They fucked me up. So bear with me.
Did they put it in? That's funny. When I told Amy that you were sick, she goes, "Is he taking NyQuil?" He likes to take NyQuil when he's sick. I'm like, God, stop giving me Dave facts.
It's true. I do like it's bad. It's bad. Like, I was going to ask you about that. Like, I have 102 fever. I'm coughing. I have a stuffy head. I feel like I won't be able to rest, and that's got NyQuil written all over it. And soon after Chris died, I had Bob Forrest on the show, and he was talking about his recovery, and I was like, so you're saying if you had a cold, you wouldn't do NyQuil? And he was like, absolutely not. And I was like, I see. But it was like, because the audience knows that I do NyQuil, or I take NyQuil when I'm sick, or if I like haven't slept for a long time and I need 8 hours, because I have a hard time sleeping sometimes.
Okay. Well, but that's the thing, is that that's what I love about this thing, is it's different for everybody in it. When I told them, because I've got a bilateral hernia right now. This is what people tune in for, to hear medical problems from old men. But I'm going to have to go in, and they're going to cut open my guts, and they're going to have to sew a bunch of shit up to keep my intestines in my stomach, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, well, are you going to take pain meds? And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Who said that?
Bob.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, absolutely. And I'm going to do it like I've done with my other surgeries. I'm going to take it as directed. I'm going to write down when I take them. I'm going to, have my wife hold me accountable, so that, I don't, and I told my doctor a long time ago, if I call you and tell you I left the prescription on the bus, or that someone stole it or something, it's a lie. I'm trying to get more.
And then, of course, Chuck, what happens if you lose the prescription on the bus and you're in crazy pain? What are you going to do then?
Yeah, I'm going to try and stay off the bus.
You're going to be like, doctor, I know I told you that if I ever tell you I lost the prescription, I was lying, but I'm really not lying. Like, what happens?
Yeah. Well, that worked really good. I used to offend a lot of people when I was using, and this one guy took offense and broke my nose pretty good, and I went to the emergency room, And they said, okay, yeah, wow, it's for sure broken. Here's 45 of the extra strength Vicodins, and they said, you're going to have to go see this person. They're going to have to set it. And I said, thank you very much. I left, and I was so happy that I got 45 extra strength Vicodins. They were pretty. They had like a beveled edge on top,
Yeah.
I don't even know if they make them like that anymore, but they were an attractive pill. And they worked really well. You take 2 or 3 of them, and you're like, derp. And as soon as I got home, my wife at the time, my first wife, goes, call them and tell them you left them on the bus and that you really need more. And they did. They got me 45 more, like right now, and I didn't go back and have it set. I just had it fixed like 4 or 5 years ago.
That's another old junkie move, is to say you left something on the bus. It's like, I left my matches, my sharpening kit, and the 45 beveled Vicodins on the bus. It's like, people don't talk like that anymore, but I like it. How did you meet Bob?
That's funny. In 90, well, it was when I was living up in LA, and I was living with these guys that were musicians, and I was doing my best to make a living playing music. And they actually went somewhere with it, but I had started developing a habit, right? So it kept me from moving forward. And they were my roommate's band. They were called Shadowland at the time, and they were playing at this little place called White Trash. I go, oh no, it was Club Lingerie with Rick Elric, and it was a big night, and they were gonna, guys from Geffen Records were there looking at what they were doing, and in between bands, this foul-smelling, dreadlocked, hat-wearing freak walks in and just walks up on the stage with an out-of-tune guitar and starts, like, singing. And I'm like, hey, fuck this bum. Get him out of here. And they go, oh, no, that's Thelonious Bob. I'm like, who? That's Thelonious Bob. And I was like, I don't know who he is. But, like, I ran into him there, and then at a couple other places, and we weren't really friendly, but we recognized each other as like, hey, what's up?
Was Thelonious Monster big at that point, or were they just coming up?
They were like one of the staples in the area. Like Jane's Addiction was happening, but they hadn't broken yet. There was another band, Concrete Blonde, that was happening, but they hadn't broken yet. And Thelonious was one of those bands where, like, in the LA scene at that time, they were like important, to a lot of people. And that was like Guns N' Roses were happening, but they hadn't broken yet.
What was your band?
What's that?
What was your band called at the time?
Oh, I was not in one. I was nursing a fledgling habit and being supportive of my roommate. So I was just sitting up there wasting time. Right.
You were just hanging out.
Right, absolutely, just along for the ride and meeting all these people and doing all this stuff. And then, so fast forward to like 6 or 7 years ago, I'm seeing X play locally here, and Amy goes, hey, isn't that guy from that Celebrity Rehab? And I go, yeah, I know that guy. So I walk up and I go, hey, what's up, Bob? And he goes, He pretended like he remembered me, but I could tell he didn't.
Right.
He was being polite.
Uh-huh.
And I said, hey, you know what? I'm working at this place down the street. Can I get your number and have you come talk to the kids? And he goes, yeah, sure. So, like, since then, he came over and he talked to the people, and his movie, I think his movie had just come out, something like that. And we started talking by phone, and I started hitting him up as sort of a mentor, and sort of, because I have a sponsor who also calls himself a mentor, not a sponsor, but I wanted to get other opinions, and he's very outspoken, and I like the fact that agree or disagree, you always know where he stands. And then my middle kid needed help, and he ended up living with Bob for 6 months.
Really? In his house?
And then, Bob had a sober living in Hollywood, the Beechwood house, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do with my kid. And he goes, give him to me. And he goes, I can't help mine, but I can help yours. It's one of those weird things. So we, I go up and visit my kid and start talking to him more, and we've got a lot of things in common, a lot of friends in common, and this kind of weird friendship happened. It was always kind of odd. And then when he wanted to start this thing, the Don't Die thing, I said, I don't know anything about that. I don't do podcasts. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not comfortable in front of a microphone. And he goes, yeah, but you care about these guys. He goes, so I want you to be the other guy.
That's why he picked you.
That's all it was, is that he's exactly that. And I think he said that in one of the early ones. It was so nice. I wanted to get a hold of it and just hold on to it for the times when I'm angry.
Right.
But I can play that the guy does like me, and that he thinks I'm a loving, caring individual, which is, I never really saw myself like that until I heard it from people like him. Because to me, I'm still the worthless piece of shit who's going to steal whatever you leave out, or I'm going to find what you're hiding. I don't know how you used or what your life was like while you were using. I know a lot of people that were able to maintain jobs and they were able to maintain sort of a front, but I can't do that. When I drink, when I use, it's obvious to everybody what I am and what's going on, and it's really ugly.
I had 2 good years, or a year, maybe 1 good year of using and working, and then many, many, many years of not working and just using, and then I had another year. I couldn't pull it off either. I couldn't pull it off either.
Right.
But now with Don't Die though, it's like this it's become a weird sort of annex movement where there's this Don't Die Sacramento and Don't Die Wisconsin. What's the story there? How did that happen?
That's Bob's whole thing. That when we started it, he goes, I want to do this for what I've done for so many other bands, because he found, John Frusciante for the Chili Peppers. He found Josh, their current guitarist.
Yeah.
He finds musicians and elevates them. He goes, all I want to do is I want to start this thing and have people who are good at it take over. So I said, okay, I can do that. I'll whatever you want me to do, I'll show up. But you never know what you're going to talk about or what's going to be happening on the political landscape that he might want to get into. And for some reason, he thinks I'm a conservative. He believes, and he thinks I'm a church-going Christian. So anytime he talks about Orange County conservative Christian,
he thinks you're going to take it personal.
No, and he looks at me and he goes, well, you guys down there in Orange County, especially you Christians, and it's just it's not about what I believe, but I become that person. So to touch back on that other thing, when someone that you respect because they've turned their life around and they've been able to help a lot of people says that you're a good person, that was really attractive to me, and I kind of needed that at first because he didn't see me the way I was. The same way my wife never saw me like that. Everybody else in my life, when they saw me, I was that guy that, I'm not welcome in a lot of places, still.
Where are you not welcome, Chuk?
There's a lot of doors I could knock on where I'm sure that there wouldn't be a pleasant memory to see me. And that was part of my 9th step was, which I liked and I didn't like was, okay, for this person, the way you're going to make amends is you're going to stay the fuck out of their life. You're not going to call them. You're not going to go where they go. And you're not going to go to their house because there's nothing you can do that will fix the kind of damage you've done. You can't just say I was wrong and I won't do it again with something. Where there's financial amends, you can make financial amends, and you can say I was wrong and it won't happen again. But if you don't need to deal with people and the amends is only going to cause more pain, then to leave them alone was the answer for that. And I know a lot of people in 12-step disagree with that, but
well, no, people. If it's going to cause harm, they say avoid it. How many years clean now?
21.
So you really think there are people that wouldn't be happy to reconnect with you or hear from you after 21 years?
Maybe maybe that's just the way I think it, because I'm not the most optimistic.
Yeah,
person
I think
in the
you
world.
have a serious inferiority complex. I think you're kind, you're caring. You know you have your shit together. I think you can knock on these doors and they'd be like, Chuck, where you been? And you'd be like, they'd be happy to see you, Chuck. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine.
Well, that's kind of you to say, but that was weird, because the one guy who I introduced heroin to, who ended up making it a lifelong project. Was the guy I was friends with since I was like 5 years old, and grew up we were 3 houses apart on the block, and he died this last year after fighting it for a long time. And then he had an overdose that put him into a coma, and at his funeral, there was a couple of his ex-wives and his sister and some friends and some people I hadn't seen for a long time. They were welcoming. And because I'm an online pastor, I got elected to do the talking. And it was an odd thing to be hugged by people that I thought just absolutely wanted nothing to do with me ever again, because of the kind of shit I caused. And it's nice. It's nice to be older and have a different view of things, and it is nice when those things happen. But there are some people that all I did was do drugs with, and I maybe hurt them. I just quit doing. I used to do anger management on Wednesday nights. Yesterday was the last one I'm going to do, and I did that to try and keep my anger in check. And I love it more than anything when people say, "I can't imagine you angry or hurting anybody." I mean, that's one of my biggest accomplishments, is to not be that guy that takes offense at everything, or that hits before he thinks.
Right.
Because I found out that all that was ego. That people weren't thinking about me nearly as much as I wanted them to, and they weren't thinking negative stuff as much as I wanted them to be. And I, had to prove I was as good as them or whatever, and move first on those things. And it's been the last 11 years I've been teaching that class on Wednesday nights, and it'll be interesting to see if old Chuk comes back. I doubt it, but it's nice.
Well, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I doubt it too. How long have you worked in treatment?
Well, the last 6 or 7 years have been solid. Before that, I got away from it to go do regular work. I was building control panels, electrical control panels for a pollution control company, because I couldn't be around it or in it or a part of it. And then my older kid was getting ready to graduate high school, so I wanted to get the GED before him because of the high school dropout. I don't even know if people drop out of high school anymore.
I think they do. I think it's the same guys who sharpen their needles and leave their Vicodins on the bus.
But I mean, back then it was just one of those things where that was part of it. This is what we did, and it was like, man, school's a drag, bro. Let's go get a look. And so I went to go get my GED, and I did pretty well on it. And because when I went back to school my senior year, I was taking freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior English because I'd never passed. I'm not good at the English.
Right.
And I wasn't good at a lot of things, so I did a couple months and said, I'm not doing this again this year, guys. I'm stepping out. My junior year, I stepped out to go to the Looney Bin. My senior year, I stepped out just because it was too much. And then it was like I said, I want to work in recovery again. And then they had all these requirements where you had to go to school and get a certification. This KDAC thing is 36 units. And I looked at it like, no way. There's no way I can do 12 college courses. And once again, the wife was like, she's an English major, from a real school, Cal State Fullerton. And it's just like, she goes, you can do this. We'll walk you through it. And it took me a couple of years to get through, because I could only do 1 or 2 classes. It was actually 2 or 3 classes a semester, and work full time and take care of the 2 kids that were growing up.
Right.
And so it's like, it took me a couple years, but then I had started interning and doing that. So it was about 10 years ago that I was doing interning and doing part-time work and doing all the stuff I needed to do to get my credentialing back. And since then, it's been a matter of finding a reputable place, or a place that puts the clients first. The place I'm at now, I've been for a couple years, and it's like, I won't badmouth the places I've been, but I have respect for the guy I work for, and I know where his heart is, and I've seen him make really bad business decisions because it's in the best interest of the client.
Right. I think a rehab that makes bad business decisions is probably a good rehab. Like it's a good telltale. If they're better with clients and with those kinds of things than making money, it's like they might actually be on the right track.
It was funny because that was Bob. Bob goes, hey, man, call Warren. Go down and check out his place. And I go, who's Warren? And he goes, man, you got to trust me on this one. And so he gave me the guy's phone number. I called him and we talked for a couple hours. And then it was like, he goes, yeah, I think you fit here. Come down and see what we do. And I went down and I sat there for a day with like 19, it was a couple years ago. It's 19 years clean. And I'm sitting in the room just watching how things work. And people are coming up to me going, how long you been clean, man? You're going to like this place. Have you detoxed already? This is a great place, man. And I'm like, yeah. I've been clean for a while. I just don't look as clean as some of the other people, I guess. But the, finding a place, and that's been kind of half the mission of what's been happening with Don't Die, is to educate people about what makes, because rehab in and of itself is not a bad idea. Even Dr. Bob had a hospital where he helped people get through the shakes,
right.
Medically get them through that, because nothing's worse than kicking in jail, and I did that a bunch of times, but helping people through that and allowing them a sort of estuary before they go back out in the ocean, a place to kind of grow and to get through all the selfish shit of poor me, and learning how to care about other people, and then being able to go back out and do life is a big deal.
Well, there's a shitload of people. There's a shitload of people who listen to this show who are, chronically relapsing or can't stop using, and they do not want to go to treatment. A lot of them don't. I mean, like, it sounds stupid, but they don't want to be separated from their phone. They don't want to. They don't basically. I mean, a lot of them just don't want to stop using, but like they don't want to go to treatment. A buddy of mine this year, one of my best friends, died, and I kind of co-signed him not going to treatment. I was like, you can just go to sober living if you live there for like a year. He wound up living there for a month and leaving. But like, I think what you're, yeah.
Well, not all sober livings are great, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I think like what you're saying in terms of rehab explain that point to somebody who's out there struggling and doesn't want to go to treatment. Why don't you give a reason for maybe why somebody should go?
Well, if the way you're living isn't working and you're miserable and you see no way out of it, it's. I feel like, I can't make anybody do anything they want to do, but we can help them achieve what they want to achieve. To get into a safe place to detox so you don't die kicking, especially if you're drinking or using benzos. To get through the sickness and to be able to have people be supportive. To be able to get some life skills back on track. I mean, I know, like, at our place, if you don't have an ID or a driver's license, let's get that going on. If you don't have a GED, let's get that going on. Let's build a resume. Let's learn how to be among people in a safe, small place. People that know exactly what you've been through, that aren't judging you, that you can start learning. I didn't think I'd be able to go get a job anywhere at any time. It had been 10 years since I'd held a legitimate job, and I had no reason. I couldn't tell people, last 10 years I've been, doing a lot of drugs, and really work, kind of interfered with that. So I've been making my living other ways, but to be able to get people to help them build their self-confidence by doing respectable things so they can have some self-respect, by doing esteemable things so they can have some self-esteem. I don't know where else in the world you can get that. You can find that in some of the rooms, but unfortunately unfortunately, 12-step, there's a lot of negative places. You can get bounced out of the wrong one, and get the wrong idea. But to be able to afford yourself that time, and if you're, most people have been to jail for 30, 60, 90 days. And if they haven't, they might get to. But the idea of putting aside 3 months, to be able to build a foundation so you get over the physical sickness, you don't have to worry about, it frees up your mind from having to worry about all the daily shit that can bring you down and get you loaded again. You've got to learn coping mechanisms. You've got to learn how to walk through a craving. There's biological reasons for a craving. When you see something you used to do or hear about it, it releases a little bit of dopamine, and your brain says, we know how to get more of this. All we got to do is go down to the corner and get more. So to be able to learn to walk through those things and to have a supportive community around you, if that's what's being provided in the treatment facility where they go, then, that bullshit about 1 in 10 or 5% of people making it or whatever, there's no reason it can't be. I was sitting in the... Is that a
true statistic, though?
Yeah, but how can you get a true statistic from an anonymous thing like medical treatment, or an anonymous thing like AA where, when was the last time you were asked? I don't know where they get numbers from, but I think numbers are skewed and people always want to know success rates. I was sitting in my place with my buddy Dave and my buddy Cesar, and we're August 22nd, August 23rd, and August 24th of 1997. And we did what was in front of us to do, and up to year 19, all 3 of us were still clean. And right now, me and Dave still are. We don't know what happened this season, but Cesar is somewhere. I don't know where he is or what's going on, but every year we call each other on our birthdays. And, so that was 100% of my little crowd stayed clean 19 years.
That's something I really don't like. That's a little resentment I have about California, where a clean date is called a birthday. I hate that. I think it's so stupid.
Yeah.
That's my New York cynicism with that.
But you guys don't clap either. They clap when we say our name.
When do they clap? When do they clap?
There's such a low self-esteem that when people introduce themselves going around the room and everybody gets their name right, they clap.
What do you mean? What do you mean? So you say my name is David and I'm an addict and an alcoholic. Everybody claps.
That's excellent, Dave.
That's great. I should go to meetings out there. People say nothing at the meetings here. People just they're just quiet.
Welcome, man. You're a winner today.
Yeah, they don't say that. They don't say that either at my thing. I went to a meeting the other day, and this guy, he had I think he had 15 or 20 years, and he was saying, and it was really deep and it was really powerful what he said. He said how grateful, and this is taking us off the track, but I just wanted to say it. He said how grateful he was that the substances were there for him when he was a kid, because if he didn't have the opportunity to get drunk or high or fucked up, he would have probably killed himself because he was so lonely and so misunderstood. And it was so powerful. I thought it was such a powerful thing to hear in the meeting.
That doesn't make sense to you? You didn't feel like... the first time... The first time I got high, I think it was just weed. I drank before that, and I drank a lot. I started with drinking and ended with drinking, but all the other special effects came into play. And I remember feeling like God gave me a hug, and that life was okay, and that things were good, and it was a solution.
Yeah. No, I totally, the way he said it, it was just powerful. It was very sincere. And that dude was like a big old guy with a shaved head, and he looked like a very tough guy. And you could just tell, I don't know, he meant it. It was powerful.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. If I thought about it for long enough, I'm sure there are times where that's the string that kept me moving along. When it might have caused all the problems, it still was there. I don't know. I think I'm one of those people that was maladjusted from birth, and that I found my fix, so to speak, in drugs. I think I was self-medicating. I know when I went to the loony bin, they always gave me diagnoses, and they always put me on Thorazine and lithium and stuff. I don't have to be on that anymore. I don't know. Some people think I should be, but I'm not.
Right.
But I think it did help, because that idea of not belonging, and I don't think it was for you, but for me, when punk rock happened, it was the outcast. It was the misfit. It wasn't the good-looking kids. It wasn't the tall guys with the cool hair and the nice cars. It was kind of the losers.
Right.
It was kind of the people that really didn't fit anywhere else.
Well, it was a movement. It was a movement that even made good-looking people need to be ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's something in itself. You know, because a lot of those guys are beautiful, but they fucking uglied themselves up to be a misfit of punk rock.
Yeah. And then, but not only that, it wasn't necessary to be achieve. You were just it was the next generation of hippie, because there was a lot of complaining without any solution. You know, which is kind of what happened with the hippies, is they said, man, there's a lot of shit wrong, but they didn't have a whole lot of workable solution to add to it. And punk rock was just like an angrier, hipper thing, where it's like, we're super angry, not really sure why, but I think it's got something to do with the government and my parents.
Right.
So I'm going to rebel.
Not to mention prog rock and cocaine and disco and all that shit. You know. And
all of it, I think all that stuff was there. Music was there for me in the same way dope and booze was. And they went hand in hand. I mean, I remember being a little kid, and like I was playing with that guy, Eric, the guy that died this year after a long-ass struggle that was ugly. It makes me so grateful I was clean this time. But he had a drum kit, and I had an out-of-tune guitar, and we went down to the Vons, and we bought near beer and candy cigarettes. You know, that's the bubblegum cigarettes that you blow on them and the little puff of cloud coming out the end.
Yeah.
Because we were going to be musicians, and this is what musicians did. They drank beer and they smoked cigarettes. You know, and then so it was like kind of that whole thing. It was so attractive. They were like not real people with real problems. You know, I don't think I ever found a place where I felt like I fit until about being 5 or 6 years sober.
And where was that?
It's funny enough, besides meetings, was actually with my family, and then I was 3 years sober when I met Amy, and I found a place where I was, and that wasn't because of the place, but it was me being comfortable with me. You know, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest beauty of getting clean, that you can be in touch with who you actually are, your truest self, whatever the expression is, your most genuine self. I mean, that's something that I always craved when I was trying to get clean. Like, I'd hear that phrase and I knew that it meant something, but it wasn't until that you actually find yourself clean in you that it is something, you know?
Yeah, and then even that took time. I mean, just the time for everything to leave the system and to get the physical body back. Unfortunately, that happens quick. You know, in 30, 60 days, people start looking better, feeling better, but emotionally, they're still fouled up. We still are. I still am at 21 years. I mean, my sponsor every year, he tells me on my anniversary or on my sobriety date, he'll tell me, you know, you're living proof that you can stay sober 21 years without an ounce of change. And I know that he knows that I've changed, because I've changed a lot in the last 8 or 9 years I've been working with him. But the idea that I'm still fouled up, that I'm still
right.
a little neurotic, I have my ups and my downs, and but I'm making my way, and I'm comfortable with it.
Right.
I guess that's a big deal, because the idea of never doing drugs again, for me, just still sounds like a bad idea. I mean, it didn't sound good when I got clean, and it doesn't sound like a good idea now. But it's so much better. You know, life is, I care if I live or die now, and I didn't. And that's the weirdest thing is I'd been suicidal, but the idea of if I died, no big deal. No one's going to miss me, which was a lie, but I believed it, and that it's not going to make any difference in the world. And I'm an example of how not to do things.
Well, now you're an example of how to do things, and now. Well, I mean,
that's arguable.
Well, I mean, you help people. I mean, you do counseling and you run groups, right?
Yeah.
And you're 21 years clean. You do a successful addiction podcast. I mean, it might not be Dopey, but it's pretty good.
No, it's certainly not Dopey. This is nerve-wracking to talk to you.
Why?
Just because I know people hold you and what you do in high esteem, and
that just seems like the biggest crock in the world. It's just like it's funny, I appreciate it. And what are you gonna say?
It's because you're in the middle of it. The band I've been in for the last couple years has a good following out here, and people will come up to me all the time and they'll go, "Oh, dude, you play guitar for Smut Peddlers? They're rad." And it's just like, wow, you're kind of famous. And I go, no, famous means people know who you are. That's what I mean. So when people ask me, dude, are you famous? But if you have to ask, I'm not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in my situation, I wait tables, and nobody knows my last name unless you listen to the show. And like, it's like I'm a fucking servant, I am not. But I love that people like the show, and I love that and I only have three and a half years. I have 3 years and 6 months basically, and which is nothing. I just like Take
the only out of that. That's a long ass time for someone trying to quit right now.
No, exactly. You're right. You're right. I'm just saying next to you, next to some very long term old timer, and I remember before Chris died, he had 4 years, and I, it's so fucked up. I would always be like, I had this jealousy thing built into me where I was like, I'll never have as much clean time as him, and of course Chris died, and like I don't have his clean time yet, but hopefully I'll get to it. It's just like it's like I get emails all the time from people who say, that I'm some sort of inspiring type, and it's
but you, and you're not going to accept that because what was that thing you did? Low self-esteem, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't want to believe good things that happen, or when people say stuff, it's embarrassing. When someone says, "Hey, will you sign this CD?" I go, "Oh, God." And my drummer Julia, she goes, "It's not a signature anymore; it's an autograph." And I'm like, "Oh no, weird."
That's
I
cool,
can't
though.
wrap my head around that because those are the people that actually achieve greatness. You know what I mean? I have my heroes, and they have autographs. I have a signature.
No, I know what you mean. But one thing that I struggle with is I can ignore 50 amazing comments, and the one person who says that the show sucks shit or I'm an idiot fucks me up beyond belief. It totally will derail me. And then the rest of the audience is like, you're a pussy and you have thin skin and you're soft, and they're right. I am a pussy and I have thin skin. And but like, why should I not take any of the good stuff in and only take the bad stuff? Like, that's the question.
I think that may be one of the characteristics of people that end up using like we did.
Right.
I think it may be one of those things. There are people that just inherently, whether it's genetically, whether it's environment, or whether it's genetics, nature, or nurture, whatever, I don't get into those arguments anymore. I used to all the time because I'd say, my grandpa was beat to death while he was being robbed on a drunken bender. My great grandfather was blown up. He was working in a dynamite factory, and he was on one of those little hand like from the cartoons, on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
The little hand.
Yeah.
He was moving dynamite from one building to another and got blown up. Probably alcohol related. He drank a lot, and he was one of those things. So my brother's dead. So it's like I can look at it, and there's like a lineage of this type of behavior. So I'm the genetic predisposition and stuff. I don't even argue that anymore. I just know that there are certain things about the people that I end up being friends with. And, Bob tells me when I tell him those things, I go, man, someone was telling me this was really good. And he goes, don't listen to it. He goes, because if you listen to them, you got to listen to the bad shit too.
Right.
And whenever there's good shit, there's going to be the opposing. The good shit and the bad shit comes. And he goes, when you start hearing the good stuff, it changes who you are. And people don't like you because of who you're going to be. They like you the way you are right now. And it's like, okay, my circle of people is small, but it's solid. I've got a bunch, a dozen people I could call day or night. People that I want to see, not people that I dread having to talk to.
Right.
It's a different world, but so I don't know where that was going. I rabbit holed that one. Sorry.
It's okay. What do you want? We're gonna be done. What do you want to leave the Dopey Nation with? Is there any kind of message you want to put out there? Is there anything you want to tell Amy secretly on the show, so when she listens to it, she could be like, "I can't believe it." Yeah.
No, man. I other than her support and her being who she is and being as honest and as forthright about everything that she is has been my example since I met her. When I met her, I don't know, real short, I was working at a truck body shop that was right around the corner from her bank, and I couldn't cash my checks there because I didn't have any ID. I was 30 years old and didn't have ID. And so she would help me at her teller window. And she was just this kind, caring person. And I asked her once if she'd go out, and she goes, you know what, I like guys to have driver's licenses. I have standards, but they're a nice way of telling me no. And I'm a little bit older than she is, but, so I liked her, and she taught me how to talk to people and to be genuine outside of my AA, my NA, my CMA circles. It's such a cool thing, man. I mean, if you find somebody like that, don't let them go. Stalk them. That's what I did. And she accuses me of stalking her. And it's other than that, man. If you want to stop, and you've tried to stop and you can't stop using on your own, get help. I don't care if you only commit to a 10-day detox somewhere, or get your name on a list, or even if you try Suboxone. I mean, I used to be so anti-harm reduction, but please, man, people are dying or living lives that are just not worth living, and it's such a waste of this time on Earth. I'm not sure what happens next. I don't know a lot of people that do know what happens after we're done here on Earth, but there is another way, and it doesn't have to, and it, as miserable as it sounds, it's not. And if you would have told me that when I was new, that I was going to actually enjoy my life someday, I just couldn't go on the way I was going on anymore. I didn't know that it would actually get good. So, don't be afraid to ask for help and get it.
Because there's so many people out there who are willing to help at any minute, That's totally, I say that all the time, It's like, if you guys need help, ask anybody. Ask me. Ask Chuk. Ask Bob. Ask any of these Don't Die people. Ask anybody in the Dopey Nation with clean time. Everybody who's clean wants to help you. Because we got help.
Right, but if you're using and it's fun and it's not killing your life and everything's great, more power to you.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not anti-drug or alcohol or anything like that, because it's just me. I'm the 1 in 10 that seems to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
There's millions of us across the country, but there's 300 million people. And most people don't have to. They don't let it grind them down into such a pathetic state as I lived in. you know, and it doesn't have to be that way, man. And it gets better. And hang on.
Well,
hang on to your ass.
I appreciate you coming on, Chuk, and thank you, Amy, for listening. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody else. And awesome, Chuk. I'm glad to have you in the. You don't hate Dopey anymore, right?
No, I didn't hate it. No, I don't hate, and I like hearing what she shares. We have kind of different lives. She doesn't like a lot of the music I like, and so I kind of have this. We have separate lives that we bring together, and I like what she shares with me about what's going on with you guys.
All right, cool.
And I know it busted her up when she was telling me about Chris, and I haven't seen her so emotional about much.
Oh yeah, man, it really affected a lot of people, and it was just something you didn't expect. I actually opened the episode with a little bit of me and Chris singing the Chili's Baby Back Ribs commercial. So you should listen to the opening if you listen to the episode, and that's why Chris was so special, and that's why I think Dopey was so special, because we had this innocence, and you didn't think that even though we were drug addicts that it was going to happen, but it can happen to anybody. Anybody that uses can potentially die the second they do it. So I always tell people to be careful. It's easier to say be careful than don't use, but just ask for help if you can.
Don't use alone. If you are using and you can get to a test kit, test that dope or do a test shot. Have Narcan around. Watch your buddies, man. Don't just if you're not ready to get clean, at least don't die until you're ready to. Be safe.
Exactly, I agree.
It can be.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Chuk. Fuck me. Thank you, Chuk. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Very interesting. We didn't talk about anything I thought we'd talk about.
Well, what did you think we'd talk about?
Guitars, singers.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about that earlier. We can talk about that again another time.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks.
Have a good night, man.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
So that was the very delightful and highly sober Chuk Davis from Bob Forrest Don't Die podcast. And fucking I'd love to know what you guys think of Chuk. So write us an email at dopeypodcast@gmail.com and let me know what you think. And I am fucking sick at home. Very ill, not well. And my very dear friend Aurora has decided to come on the show and finish the show. So here she is. What's going on?
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Aurora.
Hi, Dopey Nation.
What's going on?
Would you describe me as highly sober as well?
I would describe you as my dear friend Aurora. My highly sober dear friend Aurora. Yes, you're highly sober. I mean, that dude had, I think he had 21 years, but I had a fever during the interview. The Dopey Nation should know how I sacrificed my brain and body for this show.
So you're sick?
Well, the truth of the story is, and I don't know how much you've kept up with my maladies of the last few weeks, but I had a bad tooth, and I went to the dentist, and they removed the tooth, right?
I've got one that's ready to blow up, ready to be removed.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, check.
Oh, yeah.
As they're removing the tooth, and I'm going to recap this for the Dopey Nation and for you. The dude, he's very funny guy. He's like 65-year-old bald guy, Dr. Bob, his name is. And he hovers above me, and he goes, yeah, it's no big deal. We'll just take that tooth out in 1, 2, 3. And he takes the pliers, and he jams it in my mouth, and he grabs the tooth. And this man is a fit guy. He goes to the gym every day. But he's fucking ripping the shit out of my head. He's got his fucking elbow against my chest, and I just hear cracking as he's wrenching the tooth out of my mouth. And then it turns out the tooth was so fucking sick that he only pulled the top piece out, and he couldn't get the bottom piece out. So he has to cut into the bone, okay? And as he's cutting into the bone to remove the bottom piece, what he doesn't know and what I don't know is that he's hit an artery. And,
oh, my God.
So I will be bleeding for the next few days. And it became this gelatinous, something called a liver blood clot, which is like...
Sounds like a total hack, Dave.
Dr. Bob? How dare you?
Yeah. Dr. Bob.
No.
Sounds like a hack.
He's a wonderful man. He's a
You
wonderful
shouldn't have
man.
hit an artery.
Listen.
You should go to an oral surgeon next time.
He was telling me how I should be thanking him that I didn't have to be put under, that he saved me, $1,000 or something. But
oh, fuck that guy. You should go see an oral surgeon.
the fucking blood clot in my head was like, it was like the size of my pinky. And my pinky is huge, and it's just this gelatinous blood in my mouth. And he had to suck it out, and then he had me fucking gauze it up for like a day. And this was last week. And then I went to work on Sunday, and I waited tables, and then I started to feel kind of shitty. And the fact of the matter was that my sad little immune system had been compromised by this terrible happening. And as my immune system is trying to guard the hole in my mouth from infection, all the germs in the restaurant in my house came and got me. And this week I just got a fever and I got fucking sick.
Well, I'm sorry you're sick. I've had so much dental work. I've had 3 teeth extracted,
really?
Crowns, root canals. So if anyone from the Dopey Nation would like, any kind of advice, suggestions, emotional support, financial, suggestions on how to handle a lot of dental work, please let me know.
Okay, so when's the last time you had a tooth pulled from your head?
I think it's been 4 or 5 years since I had 3 extracted.
You had them 3 at once?
Yeah.
How did they do it?
I just, a lot of Novocaine and a lot of tears, and I just really trusted this oral surgeon. He was really excellent to me, always fair. And
I remember that. I remember when you were like negotiating dental debt and all that stuff. Fucking,
I paid over $22,000 to have those 3 teeth extracted, implants, bone grafting, and crowns.
Wow, implants!
And I just paid it all off last year.
Well, that's pretty impressive. That's some sober living right there. This guy, I have to
have one more. I have one more that's coming up here.
So you got implants where the teeth were?
Yeah.
You think I should do that too?
100%. I think that, I think that if you leave those molars empty, that over time, the molars are there to help distribute the weight of biting. So if you don't have those molars there over time, your teeth can shift around. It's not good for the healthier mouth. And the healthier mouth is super important to your overall health. So I think you should get implants. You don't have to get them, you can wait a year and a half because they're expensive, but you should get them.
Dr. Bob said he'd be satisfied if I just had the hole.
Dr. Bob, I think, is a hack.
Aurora, if you met Dr. Bob, you would think he was the most wonderful man. He's just incredibly funny, incredibly sweet guy.
I've met, I've had a lot of dental work. I've gone to a lot of dentists. I've had some really shitty treatment. I've been taken advantage of, and I've had some great dental work and some great doctors. So, I don't think there's any reason that anybody very experienced should have hit an artery. Do I think it happened? Sure. But and also the fact that he's advising you not to get an implant, I don't trust this guy, Dave.
All right. Well, Dopey is not the podcast about dental hygiene and
well, a lot of junkies lose their teeth, so this is an important PSA.
Right. Yeah, that's totally true. And it's funny because it's been like when I get sick, all it does is it reminds me of the wreckage of my past. When I get sick, it's like I'm on drugs, or I'm in withdrawal, or like things like nothing is. I can't handle anything because I'm sick, and it all comes rushing back to me every time I get sick. So part of me enjoys it. Like, that about me. Part of me enjoys the getting sick, like it's nostalgic. But on the other hand, it's like I hate being weak, Yeah.
Well, I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to feel better. You are more susceptible in the winter to getting sick, but it seems like, you're still doing Dopey. You're still going to work. So you're getting shit done.
Of course.
I'm sure you're, what television show are you marathoning at the same time?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know. Like, what was the last one I marathoned? Was I don't even know anymore. I'm done. Like, I'm done with watching these same shows over and over again. I can't do it anymore. I had started to watch The Wire again as a relaxation thing, and then all of a sudden HBO started running The Sopranos again in this whole sickness thing, so I started looking at both. But then I realized I've just seen these shows too many times. So
that was my New Year's resolution last year for 2018 was to watch, The Sopranos, and I didn't do it. I can never get past season 1.
Well, just start at season 2 then. The Sopranos is worth watching. You should start at season 2. The next thing that happened to me this week was for the first time ever, I got called into jury duty. Have you ever done jury duty?
Yeah, I did it once in New York. Yeah,
well, and did they?
I got picked. I was one of the first, it was one of the first 9 or 10 people that they asked questions to, and I got picked for the jury, and I did a 3-day trial.
And
I had a major panic attack during one day of the trial. And it was very upsetting because it was this woman who had said the bus stopped short and she fell and dislocated her shoulder. And the woman was African American and had been on welfare and disability most of her life. And so they were painting her as, trying to get one over on the system. And it just was really sad because, she was very elderly and it brought up a lot of issues of race and class. And it was just really sad. And she had, given, one doctor, she said it was her right shoulder. The other doctor, she said it was her left. So ultimately, she wasn't awarded any money, but it just felt really shitty, and it was just really kind of sad.
I asked myself out of jury duty, I claimed financial exhaustion. I said that
That's what you did?
I said I couldn't do it. They said it was going to be a month, and I just said I couldn't do it, that my family could not afford me not making money for a month.
Well, that's true.
It is true. Now, we're going to jump right into something here, okay?
Okay.
This is an email, okay? And it's an interesting, very angry email. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
It is from a guy named, what's his name? Patrick. His name is Patrick. He writes, "Hey Dave and the Dopey Nation. I'm Patrick from beautiful Bayonne, New Jersey. I'm a long-time listener, and this is my 4th email to the show, and you've never read any of the others, and you're probably not going to read this one. But what the fuck, I'll keep trying. Dave, I hope when you get this that you are in good health, although you did say in last week's episode that you had a tooth pulled. That is some painful shit. You got to take care of yourself, Dave, because that fucking mouth hole of yours is your moneymaker, and I, for one, don't want to hear you all fucking toothless and shit, lisping and slurring through every episode like a fucking retard. Anyway, I love the show, and my sponsor said that I should let you know what's going on in my mind. He says that I'm working a good program and I have just the right combination of serenity mixed with bitterness that keeps it real. I love that guy. I've never had an actual moment of clarity, and I don't currently reside in a fluffy pink cloud, but hey, I ain't drinking or using, so there you go. I just want to let you know that I think you're doing a great job by yourself ever since Chris checked out. I'm fucking pissed off about that shit, but there's nothing any of us can do, and I'd rather talk about some other real shit that bothers me. And now, like that douchebag Joe Schrenk, and that's a guy who came on a few weeks ago. And he says, what an ego on that guy. I mean, you were telling the Dopey Nation just hitting your 1 millionth downloads when that cocksucker goes in a story about some bullshit thing that he worked on getting 1 million views and didn't even let you have a minute of glory. Yeah, he did that, Aurora. We hit the 1 million downloads, right?
Yeah.
Whose show did he think he was on? And for fuck's sake, what kind of program is he working when he couldn't say enough bad things about those businesses that he started? Look here, Joe Stank. When you get pushed out 3 times from your own companies, maybe the fucking problem is you. Does anybody else see a pattern here? And why does it sound like this guy wants to keep everyone doped up for the rest of their lives? For someone that claims to have 22 years of sobriety, he seems like the least sober guest you've ever had on the podcast. Don't get me wrong, I do think that not dying is good, but there comes a point in everyone's recovery when getting off all of that shit is the only way to live a life beyond your wildest dreams instead of just dreaming about that life. This fucking guy just seems like he's warping recovery into a business where he can co-sign his clients' addictions with more prescriptions and more dependency. I guess what I'm trying to fucking say is that by definition you can't be sober if you're still taking drugs. And then if you're still taking drugs or drinking just because that wasn't your drug of choice, can you really be in recovery? And then what's up with some of those comments on Facebook? Some guy had the nerve to say that this podcast is going to complete shit, if not there already. And then later in the comments he says he's not talking shit when in fact he shit-talked the podcast in his original post. Obviously this dude is not well and needs some serious help, so I will give it to him now. Go to a fucking meeting, get a fucking sponsor, work the fucking steps, be a fucking service, and stop running your fucking mouth. And also for you people that think this podcast is too long, I love this guy, by the way.
I love this guy from beautiful Bayonne.
Yeah, from
He's
fucking
cool.
Bayonne. Have you ever been to Bayonne?
I mean, I've been through it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been there. Why don't you go over to Target and buy yourself a fucking egg timer, set it for an hour, and when it goes ding, turn the fucking show off, because obviously that's all your little fucking wet brain can handle. And then listen next week for an hour or not. Well, that's all I've got for now. It's probably too much, but I don't give a fuck. Maybe that means I'm getting better because I really don't care as much as I used to about what other people think of me. Anyway, Dave, I really appreciate what you do, and I promise to be a content member of the Dopey Nation that won't make suggestions about who you should have on the show, because I'm sure it's hard as fuck trying to schedule people and stay sane and work and have a family and everything else. I hope you read this, but if you don't, I'll send a 5th and then a 6th until I wear you down. Just kidding. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and toodles for Chris. And that's Patrick. That's some email, right?
Yeah, that's a great email. Patrick had some really good insights, and I love the fucking truth he was serving.
Yeah, you're spared from the Dopey Nation Facebook group, right? Or are you a member of that?
No, I am a member.
Did you see all that shit talking about me last week on the Dopey Nation?
I knew it was going to drive you insane. I saw it. I was like, oh God, Dave's going to go insane.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I went berserk.
I'm sure.
I don't handle criticism well. I'm a fucking pussy.
You are a pussy. I don't even think you should have acknowledged it. Makes you look like a pussy.
Acknowledge it where? Here? Now?
Yeah, and on Facebook.
I didn't acknowledge it on Facebook. Oh, I did, right? I said State of the Dopey Nation. Listen.
Then again, that's what I like about you, Dave. You wear your insecurities and your feelings right on your sleeve.
Like, what am I going to do? Like, have something bother me and then not mention it? Isn't that where resentment is formed?
Yes.
So, I wound up writing.
Come on, you've got 1 million downloads. Like, people are going to be critical.
I know. I want everyone to love me, and I want everyone to love the show.
I know.
You know?
So look at Patrick. Patrick's like, fuck that guy. He should go to Target and get an egg timer.
Yeah. I should get an egg timer. Do you have an egg timer?
No, I don't. But I love Target.
Yeah.
It's my happy place. I was feeling like fritzed out yesterday, so at lunch I walked to Target and walked around for 15 minutes. How crazy is that? I was like, oh, I feel much better now.
Linda loves Target like that. Fucking yesterday, me and Linda go out to lunch with her family. And as we're at lunch, I feel the sickness come on to me. And I don't do well with sickness or whatever. So I go to Linda, we gotta go now, I screamed at her in front of her dad and her brother. And she got very upset. And then we had to go to Target, you know what I mean? And the fever is just creeping in. And she's like, let's look at these strollers. And I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And thank God when I got home, I had a fever, because it would have been so bad if I wasn't actually sick.
Good.
Now,
good. I'm glad you were actually sick to get out of Target. I mean, I set a timer sometimes when I go to Target. Otherwise, and sometimes I just am like, fuck it. If you want to spend 90 minutes looking at moisturizer and pajamas, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Target because they have, and maybe Target should sponsor the show. But the greatest thing about Target is they have everything over there. If you need it, they got it. They got socks, they got light bulbs, they got cat litter. This episode is brought to you by Target. And I also like
that.
What?
I like that Patrick said that he loved his sponsor. I think that's nice.
How's your sponsor?
She's great. I mean, that's what I was thinking. I love my sponsor so much, and I once heard this speaker tape, and this old timer say, like, if you don't love your sponsor, get a new one.
Well, yeah, that's true though. You know who I just spoke to?
Who?
My dad. And my dad says he sends you hugs and kisses, and he hopes that you don't say too much on the show.
I'm doing my best, Alan. It's all I can do.
Are you thinking about the knows?
No, not until this moment.
Yeah, that's funny. So what the Dopey Nation doesn't know is that my dear friend Aurora recently traveled far east to Japan for Christmas.
For Christmas and New Year's. Yes, I did. And
you worked there too, right?
I was there in 2011 for work, yes. So this is my second trip to Japan.
And
I love it. I love traveling there. It's beautiful. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the food, the history, the cities, the mountains. I went to Tokyo, Takayama. I went to Kyoto and Osaka and Kamagawa.
Wow.
And I went to a lot of temples and onsens. It was beautiful. I can't wait to go back again.
We always get dinner from a place in town called onsen. What is onsen? It's a province in Japan?
No, an onsen is there's a lot of hot springs in Japan, and so an onsen is like a indoor and outdoor hot spring where you soak, where you're separated, men and women for the most part. There are some where you're mixed, but you're totally naked and you're with strangers, and you shower, and then you go outside into these hot springs and mineral pools, and they'll have sometimes just one or sometimes many that are different temperatures or with different mineral properties, and you just hang out. So like we were in the mountains and it's snowing and we're outside in like this 80-90 degree hot spring. It's magical.
So you got naked in front of Japanese strangers?
Yeah, and
nice.
Strangers from all over the world.
Nice.
People that we're traveling too.
And this is a true gift of your recovery, all this travel. But I thought there was some downside to the trip.
Yeah, I mean the trip was the trip was also hard in some ways, just because I think that I went through this breakup in October, and so it brought up some feelings for me of like sadness and anger that, I really want to have a partner, and so I want to be able to take vacations with a romantic partner. I was with my best friend and her son, who I love dearly, but it's a very different kind of travel experience. So,
right.
And I think, too, like when you're recently going through a breakup too, the holidays can be a difficult time. So, in some ways there was some disappointment there,
Yeah. Totally. But, I'm glad that, it's awesome that you get to do it. And it's like, it's weird, because you always want what you don't have. You know what I mean? And I think that like, an addict is incredibly prone to feeling, worse about something. Like for example, that Facebook comment got me so upset, or like you can get down about something in the moment, because that's kind of the way we're programmed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I was at a meeting this week, and it was a bunch of people talking about kind of like luxury problems, and the truth is that I'm like, I forget the difference between, when I was totally down and out, and my problems now. I tend to deal with a problem now that's like, not a major problem, as though it was like a life or death thing. I don't, it's my addict brain or whatever, it has a hard time differentiating, between what's worth getting upset about and what's worth just living with,
Yeah. That's when I think, it's like what's been on my mind this week is like the impermanence of feelings, you know, of how much my perspective can change within a day. You know what I mean? That I can think I have a problem about something, and then, you know, some recovery kicks in where I'm like, okay, you know, that's actually not a problem. I can find some gratitude. I can think about this differently. You know, there's a lot of different tools I have, whether it's a meeting or meditation or moving a muscle to kind of, you know, or just saying like, please God, like, you know, take these obsessive thoughts from me right now, because like, you know, I don't need to spin out about some kind of first world problem that I think I have.
So you're saying this is working for you?
Yeah, it is working for me.
Because I forget all that stuff in the moment.
But within a day, you know, I can forget too. You know, I can be really like spun out and in a shitty mood, and then a couple hours later can almost feel like a pink cloud, like a real high. Like, oh, I've got to remember, like, you know, to have a positive mental attitude. You know, like this week I was like, you know, there was one day I was like, I'm fucking too old. I'm always going to be alone. Nobody's ever going to love me. It's just not going to happen for me. And, you know, then a couple hours later, I'm like, I am fucking beautiful. I'm still young. I have a job. I have a great apartment. I have friends and people that love me. Like, you know, there are millions of men out there. Like, there are so many possibilities. My God, life is beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, that's within one day.
Right.
That's the thinking.
Right. That's funny, and that's awesome. And I think that's a great, like, sort of lesson for anybody out there who's listening that's struggling, that you can't. I mean, I hate all the fucking Pollyanna-ish shit about AA, but the fact is that these tools work, and you can turn something over by asking for help or by asking somebody else how they're doing, and it's pretty amazing. And I know you and I do that all the time with each other, you know, and it's great, you know.
I mean, the other thing about, you know,
wouldn't you say it's great that you and I do that with each other?
Yeah, no, that is a real gift, because in the past you and I might disagree or have a fight and not talk for a month, 2-3 months, and now we can apologize and talk about it.
Right.
Which is a real gift. I'm really grateful for that.
All right, just take it easy. You know, take it easy with this gratitude. You're freaking me out.
I know. I had a shitty day a couple days ago, and you know, I just knew, like, all right, today is really shitty. I don't like my reactions. I made some mistakes. I had to do a 10-step. My thinking was fucked up that day. But, you know, I went to some back-to-back meetings. I went to the gym a bunch. I took a fucking hot bath. I talked to friends. Like, you know, it's impermanent. You know what I mean? Like, yesterday and today have been way better days. So...
there you go.
You know?
I'm going to read another email, okay?
Okay.
This is from Teresa, okay? She says, "Hi, Dave. I'm back on the Dopey wagon, listening constantly and really enjoying your interviews. Sans Chris, which is much to my surprise, and only because I was so convinced the show would never be the same again. And it won't. But it's equally as good, and that's got to feel amazing on your part. Thank you for doing this. It's the most real thing in my life. My little time listening on my commute to my fancy job and home again to my perfect family and home. Not that I don't absolutely adore my life now. Hearing the stories, it scratches the itch to live free and do whatever the fuck I want. The craving to visit the ex-lover that is my drugs, and the secretly getting away with it, like you spoke about with Chris. Thanks for bringing your impeccable comic timing." This lady is really nice. "And your genius conversational skills to the dark ass shit that is so fucking real and present in society and yet so unspoken about. Thanks for bringing it to the forefront comfortably and hilariously on this podcast and sending it out in the world. My prayers and love with you and your family. Also, so cool to hear Linda on the show. She's super cool and funny sounding. Stay strong and toodles." Well, you know, thank you, Teresa. Isn't that an amazing email?
That's really nice, Dave. I'm sure that was a good counter to that other shitty email you got.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm incredibly grateful to do the show. I think a weird thing about the show is, like, you know, like, it's not as like debaucherous as it was, you know, and it's like I sometimes forget to pump it up with the Dopey stories, you know. Like I think this episode is going to definitely be on the recovery side of Dopey, but I don't know. You know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? You got any debaucherous story you want to tell before you go?
Well, sure. I'll tell this one story about this. I went to this wedding in Marin County outside of San Francisco, and that was during my like champagne phase when I was like only drinking champagne. And so I went to this good friend's wedding, and you know, it started during the day, and I started drinking champagne really early. I don't think I had very much water or any food that day. And, you know, cut to like midnight, we're all still partying. I had also been smoking a lot of weed and taking some pills, and I'm in the hot tub, and I can feel myself starting to like pass out, black out. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to die. I don't want to drown. So I'm going to get out of the hot tub. And, you know, cut to me waking up the next morning topless with a fucking complete stranger. Door open, you know, I'm in like a house that like everyone from the wedding party is staying at. I have no recollection of like how I got into the hot tub. Who's this guy next to me? How, you know, I'm half naked. And come to find out, like, I had been passed out with my top off. That like everyone from the party had seen me, you know. It was just fucking humiliating. So this guy was going down the hill from Stinson Beach back into San Fran and gave me a ride that morning. And it's like one of the windiest roads ever. And it was the first time that I had like the most excruciating hangover, headache, wanted to throw up, anxiety, shame, just like a total fear, you know?
Right.
And that would be a kind of hangover that I would have for, you know, the next 15 years.
Right. When was that?
That was in my mid-20s.
Your champagne phase.
Yeah, it was about 25, 26, my champagne years.
I think that's funny. That is a little classic Dopey. I want to tell a quick story. You want to listen to a terrible story? You never like to hear my stories, but do you want to hear a quick one?
Yeah, quick one.
All right. When I lived in Los Angeles with Todd and Jeremy, me and Todd worked on this shitty fucking movie, and I had gone out there, you know, from rehab with the intention of just smoking pot. But what I didn't know is that Todd had gotten hooked on crystal meth. So as soon as I got back there, Todd was in San Francisco, and he came back down, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm smoking meth." And I was like, "Well, I want to smoke meth." So I just went on some crazy meth run with him. And as soon as I ever did meth, I realized like I'm not cut out to do meth. You know, it's not a drug that works with my, you know, biology or neurotic brain. So the second I'm doing the meth, all I can think is I want to do dope, I want to do pills, I want to do dope, I want to do pills. And Todd had been getting the meth from this guy, this classic LA fucking meth dealer, and his name, and I'm not even joking, his name was Diggy. Okay?
Nice.
Diggy.
Good name.
You know, he was like one of these dudes with like short hair and a white t-shirt and jeans. He looked like a skater kind of guy, pale, methy guy named Diggy. And I met with Diggy before me and Todd went to go work on the movie, and I said, "Dude, can you please get me some fucking dope so that when I get home I can finally feel okay?" And Diggy was like, "Yeah, you got it, you know." And I gave Diggy all this money, and I went with Todd to work on the movie. And Todd had wound up getting home early. You know, his day ended before mine, right? And I go home, and Todd and Diggy are there, and it turned out that fucking Todd had gotten the dope from Diggy to protect me from the heroin, and Todd had taken the heroin and done it. And I got so fucking angry at him. I remember I lost my fucking, you can imagine, I lost my mind. And Todd was like, "I'm just trying to protect you." And meanwhile, he had gotten my heroin from Dickie.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's a little dopey for all the people who are listening to the show that want some dopey. And if you are listening to the show and you want some dopey, why not send in a perfectly length dopey voicemail? And I think a perfect dopey voicemail is fucking 5 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes. I never talk for fucking 10 minutes straight on the show. Don't send in long voicemails. Send in short voicemails. Don't you think, Aurora?
Dave, you know what I was thinking about this week? Remember when we used to give away free gum in Union Square? Like, that was like your job for a while. You'd like be giving shit away everywhere, and we'd get off the train and you'd be screaming like, "Get it, one and all!" Like, you just be screaming crazy shit at strangers, and we would always be like giving away free crap.
Yeah, that was when they launched icebreakers. And we were giving away icebreaker gum. We'd be like, "Get your icebreakers here! Get your icebreakers!" Yeah, we did that all the time. I remember we would have like huge bags of thousands of sticks of gum. And I remember we would go up to Nat Sherman and trade the gum for cigarettes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. So what do you think? God. Do you think... I want to ask your opinion about this. You don't listen to many podcasts, do you?
No, not really.
And you don't listen to much dopey. But don't you think that a voicemail that's longer than 6 minutes is too long?
Yeah, I do agree with that.
As somebody in production?
Yeah, I think that 5-6 minutes. I mean, if it's a dopey story and it's a good dopey story, maybe a little bit longer. But yeah, keep it short and sweet. Keep it concise.
And keep it funny. You know, and all you have to do is record it on the voice memo feature on your phone and send it to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Reddit and Facebook and all this stuff. Fucking Dopey Nation fan group is obviously running wild, and, you know, I'm trying not to look too much at it so I can be spared, you know, of my neuroses, you know. But I think Dopey Nation is hanging in there. I think... you know, it seems like the podcast is helping a lot of people out, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody that listens. I think it's awesome. Makes me happy.
Well, thanks for having me on again. I enjoyed it. I had fun, and I think you're doing great work, Dave.
Would you say I was doing?
And I've been listening to more dopies. I listened to some on the plane to Japan.
Would you say I was doing God's work?
No.
You wouldn't say I was operating with God's will in mind, doing the Lord's work?
Pump the brakes, Dave.
All right.
Maybe on the 2 millionth download, you'll be doing more of God's work.
That's when I'll be doing God's work, when I get 2 million downloads. Did you see this movie? You know what I started watching is this fucking HBO or Amazon Prime Homecoming. Have you seen that? I
haven't. I started watching it, but I turned it off. I don't know.
I hate Julia Roberts, and I don't care about the military. And it's all like noir-y, but it's snappy at least.
Yeah, I heard it was good. I like the director. All right, listen, I have to go back to work.
All right, well, you did the Lord's work here. You really worked on God's behalf and coming on the show. So thank you for following God's will and coming into the show.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, take care, Aurora.
Thanks, Dopey Nation. Okay, bye.
Bye. So that was my very old and dear, especially old and dear friend Aurora, who is a total shining example of recovery. Love it when Aurora comes on the show, and she even gave us a little bit of a little dopey, little champagne dopey. Want to thank Chuk from Don't Die for telling a bunch of his story and being the sensible member of the Don't Die team. And I want to thank Patrick from Bayonne for really bringing the hammer down on the shenanigans arriving around Dopey. Fucking hardcore, Patrick. And then Teresa also, thank you. And even though I talked so much shit about long voicemails, I have a long voicemail from original Dopey Nation member Drew. And Drew actually was one to tell me that I'm very thin-skinned and soft. And the truth is that Drew is right. So it is a new year, and I am now less thin-skinned and harder. I'm sick. I don't give a fuck. This story is pretty amazing, and it's the first time Drew copped heroin in Delaware. So stay strong, Dopey Nation, and toodles for our friend Chris, who we will always miss, and stay strong. And here's Drew.
Oh, motherfucker, goddamn shit. Yo, what's up, Dopey Nation? It's Drew from Delaware. Been listening to the Dopey podcast for about 3 years. Been talking on and off with Dave and Chris for most of that time. I'm going to share the story of the first time I ever copped heroin on the streets of Wilmington, Delaware. If any of you know Artie Lang's story by any means, you'll know that he described it as the heroin capital of the East Coast. He used to say he would leave the Howard Stern podcast, or not podcast, the Howard Stern radio show, drive down here to Delaware. It takes about 2.5 hours, 3 hours from New York, and cop and get out. One of the benefits of doing that in Delaware is 13 bag bundles for $25. Now, me personally, I started on Percocet 30s. I used to split one with me and my ex-wife. We were codependent addicts. But like everybody knows, it goes from doing one in between two of us to each of us doing one, and now each of us are doing two, and now it just has lost its mind. Now, it might have been the winter of 2015 or 14. I have $30 in my pocket, and $30 would have gotten me well for about a day on a Perk 30. When I first started buying them, you could buy them for $10 a John. But then they became $15, then $20, and then it went up to 1 milligram is $1, and that's $30. And I full well knew that from other friends and the wheelings and dealings of Delaware. I used to be big into selling ecstasy, so everybody would always ask me if I got perks. Never did. But I knew that I could buy a bundle for $25. So it was the winter time. It was early in the morning. I had to be to work at 8 a.m. And I worked about an hour and a half away from where I lived. So what I would do is I would be an utter piece of shit, and I would get up at about 5 a.m. I would sneak into my wife's purse. I would take our shared debit card, and I would run to the ATM and grab $30 and then sneak back in the bedroom and return it. Not thinking that she would ever check, which she had caught me multiple times. And needless to say, we're not together anymore because she has some sense and I have issues. Also, just to state right now, I am over a year clean, so I'm doing well, but this is the story. So it's about 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning, and any good heroin addict knows nobody buys their dope late at night. There's no sense in it. You're buying your dope early in the morning to get well to go to work. A lot of heroin addicts I knew always were just trying to get well for work, getting highs for the weekend. So I never shot up. I was always a snorter. So what I did was I got my $30, hopped in my Kia, brand new Kia. It was I think it was a 2015 or 16, and I cruise into Wilmington, Delaware. Now, if any of you check the news, in all the cities of the United States, your odds of being shot are higher in per capita in Wilmington, Delaware than anywhere else in the United States. For such a small city, it is an extremely dangerous city. But living in Wilmington my whole life, I know where I belong and where I don't. But that also means I know where the heroin is and where it isn't. And it's right where I don't belong. So I go down to this part into Wilmington. They used to call it the Bucket. It's the lowest part of Wilmington on the east side. And I did the same thing all of us great addicts do when you're looking for open-air drug markets. I start cruising the streets with my window down. And I'm just slow rolling, smoking a Newport. And I'm just waiting for that one dope boy to go, yo! And that's the international sign for pull over what you need. So I go around the block. The guy yells at me, yo! I don't stop right there because I don't know him from a fucking hole in the wall. So I go around the block, go circle a couple blocks, scoping for the cops, seeing if there's lookouts. Now, on the block where they used to sell the dope, it was two one-way streets, and they would have about three guys in the center, and at the end of these one-way streets, they'd have one guy posted up. So they had pretty good lookouts, just in case the police roll through. And in this part of Wilmington, had anybody even seen me, they'd have pulled me over immediately. I'm in a brand new car. I'm in a dress shirt with a vest and a tie. I worked an office job. And anyway, so come around the block, and I pull up to where these three dope boys are standing. And I rolled out my window a little bit. At the stop sign, a guy comes up to me. He's like, yo, what you need? And I'm like, I'm looking for bundles. He was like, what you got? I was like, well, that's not how shit works. What I got. I'm going to tell you $50. You're going to tell me a bundle's $50. I asked him how much you need for a bundle. Well, he goes, it's $25. I'm like, all right. So I take the money and I put it in my hand, and he yells at me in the scariest fucking voice I've ever heard. The fuck's wrong with you, motherfucker? Don't you know where the fuck you're at? And I was like, oh, fuck. Am I about to die? He's like, you got no fucking sense coming down here doing that dumb shit, do you? Who the fuck do you think you are? And it scared me. And I was like, I started apologizing to this guy. I'm like, I'm sorry. I thought you were selling. I don't know that. I'm sorry. I'll leave. He's like, the fuck you gonna leave for? You want your dope or not? I'm like, yeah, I definitely want my dope. So I go to hand him money. He snatches the money out of my hand like he was trying to take my fingers with it. And he goes, you're lucky, motherfucker, that you found me. And these other motherfuckers, you wouldn't have got shit. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. He's like, yo, I'm about to drop you some knowledge, and this is something you better pay attention to. You never give your cash first before you get your shit. You want to get your fucking shit took? You just going to leave your brand new car here as you chase somebody for $25 over a bundle of dope that we paid $10 for? I'm like, nah. He was like, you need to have some motherfucking sense, boy. You don't know where the fuck you are. I'm a trustworthy individual. I want you to come back to me. I ain't going to jack you. But I just want you to know, you never give your cash up again without getting your shit first. And, yeah, he gave me my bundle. I gave him his $25. I was on my way. I always do this thing where I like rub my hands together. I get all excited, just going, oh shit, I'm about to get my high on. And I pulled an Artie Lang move. I took the bag out of I took my blue paper bag out of the cellophane. I ripped it in half. I looked at it. It looked like maybe it was a 10th full or something like that. Roll up a tutor, put it in there, and I snort it up, and you get that vinegar, cat pissy taste of dope. You know this is dope. And I was like, I pulled a total Artie Lang. I was like, I'm in trouble. Because normally I would have to do without. If you don't have $60, you're not getting fucked up. But on $25 a day, when I'm making $250, this is a habit I can maintain. So after that, I probably did dope for another 2-3 years or so. I have about a year clean and some. Me and my wife are no longer together. I decided to destroy that due to a dope habit and a couple other indiscretions I'm not too proud of. But now I do NA. I don't follow steps. I don't pray, but I think group therapy is far more important than anybody can believe. You don't got to believe in God. You don't got to do these steps, but you do have to believe in yourself, and you do have to want it. And I always tell everybody, what's a success in recovery? Is a success where you die sober? Because if that's success, how do we know anyone's a success until you die? Or is success just bettering your quality of life? Is it a relapse and you going, this is a mistake, I don't want this? That's success to me. It's not $30,000 in rehab. It's not repeating 12 steps. It's not crushing yourself into the ground for a mistake. It's realizing mistakes happen and realizing you can come back from this. I believe in all of you. If any of you have any doubts, please reach out. Don't be ashamed to tell somebody you're fucked up. don't be ashamed just to say, I need help, because people do love you and they don't want you to end up as this statistic. I'll drop a really shitty number on you and then I'll leave you alone. In Vietnam, 68,000 Americans died. That war lasted years. In the year 2017 alone, 72,000 Americans died from opiates. That's a scary number. No parent should have to put their kids in the ground, and none of us should put our friends in the ground over a high. Find something out there, tell people you love them, and stay strong, Dopey Nation.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. 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 And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had. And I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had.